demonstrating to make the point, it looked as though I was doing it that way. When I was talking about Takiro Showdown, when I was saying we're coming around, bringing the hips around this way, it did. I mean, like I said, I watched the video back myself, and it looks as though we are finishing in Sean. We are actually finishing in Hammy. Coming around is just coming across. We move the leg first. Very different to what you were saying a second ago, and I will come on to that in a moment if you bear with me. Coming off round to the side now, come round here. So we're moving the hip this way, but we're not bringing it right round to square. It will be from here just to 45, and then from 45 degrees be through back to square, exactly as you said. Now you also make the point from here, using the transitionary stance, Ikuashi that you can call it. It may be exact, it's probably very rough, I imagine, Ikuashi, and then from there, then coming out and finishing in the same position as ourselves. The point I wanted to make with this is I can understand exactly what you're saying with the idea of wanting to be able to come from there. You was going to go forward, you can now redirect. Something comes in, you was going to go up again, you can come backwards, you can change and alter your position all the way through. Now, I'm not sure about yourselves, I presume you do, but you just use that principle as well as a bit of a backup, I suppose, as the head turn. Now, with the head turn, obviously with that, you're spotting your opponent, you're seeing exactly what's coming at you, and you're reacting. Now, if you wasn't doing that, you hear something, something's coming from that way, deal with something this way maybe, for whatever reason, and something's coming from that way, there, and then you decide what you're doing. But I would suggest that the head turns, perhaps, sort of negate having to relocate once you've committed. You've seen what is coming at yourself, and whether the block is here, as you were saying, which makes a lot of sense by the way, whether the block is here, whether the block is actually the Gadambarai itself. Once you've seen what's coming, you react to it. So you're reacting to the block. I would also suggest that as, I think it was Chucky Mabothu, not sure if I pronounced that quite correctly, I know how to spell it, not sure if I pronounced it correctly. Actually, if it was him, who actually said, Kata works best against an untrained individual, works best against those who have no idea what you're using against them. So, to that end, I mean, that the theory of looking and then reacting may not work fantastically well in Kumite, but in a self-defense situation, you see someone come in and go, bang, to give you a big good old football volley on the side of the leg or on the back, or just come in with a big low punch, whatever it might be. You react, boom, the chances of them redirecting halfway through whatever they're doing as an untrained individual, as a street fighter, or an untrained street fighter even, who's just coming at you trying to cause damage, it's very likely they're going to redirect halfway through. So, while I understand exactly what you're saying from a principle point of view, it does make sense to have that option, but it also makes sense to just go straight into it, purely because we've got that look. Now, if we don't have that look, I will agree completely what you're saying, but that look, I think, would suggest that we know what's coming and we're reacting to it. Now, obviously, there may be times when we need to come through and then relocate. Excuse me, sorry, just having dinner. I keep doing this after food, should stop doing that. Sorry, dogs are off. Yeah, so you come through and then relocate. That does make a lot of sense. And there's times in higher grade katas that we've got which that principle would be evident, very evident. I would also suggest that at a beginner's level, i.e. this is the first kata we do, we've got white belts doing this kata. It's something that maybe we could bring into the forefront at a later stage in their training. I don't think it's priority at that stage in their training. I think it's very much you speak about the three principles of teaching, the repetition, exaggeration and isolation, and they all make a lot of sense. I'll come on to them a little bit more in a moment if you don't mind. But with them, I would, what's the best way to say? I would also add a couple more. principles, and the bunkai is pure examples of that principle in action. So what we need to do in theory is learn the principle behind the move, and we can then apply it in many different ways. I was actually reading a bit of a Shotokan book relatively recently. I don't know if it's the type of thing that you would use or follow or even agree with, to be honest, but they had 3 stages of bunkai. It does make sense. It's probably not how I would turn them. I can't remember exactly the Japanese terms for them. One was Hadouken, Waza, bunkai, and the other one was Chudan. Basically, it was saying there's 3 levels. There's an obvious level, i.e. block, punch, and doing it exactly as you would see it in the kata. That makes a lot of sense for beginners. You've then got the second level, the intermediate level, where it changes slightly. So it might be block, punch, no step through, or it could be block, slightly step off on an angle. It could be a slightly different block, but exactly the same principle. And then you're moving on to the highest grade of bunkai, where it's all about the principles. So instead of being block, punch, or block, punch, step through, it's literally block, counter. So it could be anything. So it could be step back and block, forward and counter. It could be absolutely anything. It's all about the principle of Gono Sen. So that is something I teach with progression. So obviously you teach the kata first, teach the performance. I think the performance is the first and foremost thing you should be teaching. It should be priority. And then once you begin to understand the performance, then you can introduce the bunkai, then introduce the bunkai-o, which is where you're taking the principles, using them in a slightly different scenario, and then you're using the senjutsu, the principles behind the move, to apply it in any way. And using those to then perhaps supplement your training with other areas. Take, for example, what other kata we got? MP, what you'll be aware of. MP, a lot of its power is drawn from speed. So you would use supplementary training, i.e. speed training, tube training, weightlifting, lots of explosive style training, other than the kata itself, to help you develop the style of MP. And that, I believe, is one of the ways, in conjunction with lots of other things as well, how you begin to study a kata as a whole, as a complete style, so to speak. And I know there are those out there that say, kata's not a complete style in its own right. I would contest that very strongly. I believe every kata is a style in its own right. Perhaps the only one I would say in our system, which may not be entirely the case, is Taigyoko Shodan. As you probably know, Funakoshi created the Kion Kata because he felt the Heian katas were still too difficult to teach to beginners. Something which I would probably